People always say that you have to have money to make money, and that there's an extraordinary level of sacrifice on the road to success. So how is it that investors like us, who didn't start out with much money and who don't rely on banks and credit, how is it that we can increase our income and build our wealth in a way that doesn't require us replacing one full-time job with another while still enjoying the things in life that matter most to us? That has always been the big question, and this podcast reveals the answers. I am Carrie Like, and this is the Investor Warrior. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Investor Warrior podcast show. So excited to have our next guest on today, which is Jessie Lee. Jessie, thank you so much for coming on and taking time out of your crazy day today, which you are having a little bit of a crazy day.
We're just laughing about it. Absolutely. So actually, Carrie, I want to have the opportunity to introduce Jessie because Jessie and I, we met each other just this past summer, right, Jessie?
Yeah. So a little less than a year ago, if I remember right.
Less than a year ago. I've been keeping tabs up with you. So you are living in a suburb outside of Seattle, Washington, originally born in California. And just really doing an amazing job over there, being a mentor to the individuals in your group and being a family man to your sons and to your wife while you are mastering buying and holding properties. So, but it wasn't always that easy, right?
So Danielle told me a little bit about your kind of story and your background. And it sounds like, honestly, it's amazing that you're like sitting here talking to us today physically, because you've had kind of a crazy roller coaster of a ride so far.
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah. So where do you want to start?
Gosh. Okay. All right. So you know that we're doing this Triumphant Comeback Series. So I don't know. I really want to start because when we're younger, right? What do you want to be when you grow up? We all want to be successful. We all want to be triumphant in what we do. So, kind of taking it back to maybe your childhood, Jessie, you're a teenager, you're young, maybe kind of talk to me about your family unit, what you were raised, what is success in the eyes of the individuals that are raising you.
I don't know if I have a straightforward answer really for that. I grew up, I was the oldest of three kids. I'm the only boy. My dad was a Vietnam veteran. He's from Vietnam. So he fought with South Vietnamese military and with the U.S. military, and not in an official capacity with the U.S. military. I don't know how the paperwork and all that part went, but he's a veteran. He had a lot of struggle, and long story short, was able to escape all of that as a teenager and ended up over here in the United States, and where he met my mom, and eventually I was born. So he, I always had that influence and that person to look at, to see that, my life here is very easy compared to where it could be somewhere else.
Right.
And he never, pushed that on us, but it was, I knew where he came from and I knew how he grew up, and I knew that it gave me good perspective, really. So I've never felt like I've really struggled much, because I can look at what other people have to do, and I'm like, whatever I'm doing is really easy compared to that. So there was always that in the back of my mind, that good perspective, I guess. And even though there were a lot of times when even my parents and the people around me didn't necessarily they weren't necessarily doing things that were conducive to I guess a normal or successful environment, but they always support whatever I'm doing. So I always had that.
So it seems that those themes are something that even have rang true to you through that roller coaster that you've been on, which I know we're going to get into, but even now for your own family, and just, working hard, being loved, being cherished, and moving the ball forward, and that no matter what, other people have things much harder. So
Yeah.
kind of, with that mindset, you had a pretty incredible opportunity in your teenage years, right around when you were 19, you were jumping into real estate.
Yeah. So I got my real estate license pretty much right out of high school.
Mhm.
And well, I had started mortgage. Let me step back. Actually, I'm trying to remember that it's been a while that the the timeline's a little fuzzy at this point.
Yeah.
I think that happens as we get older.
Right. So I had started in mortgage, yeah, right out of high school. I had a friend of mine who I grew up with. His older sister was a mortgage loan officer.
Hmm.
This is at a time where there wasn't really a licensing requirement. It wasn't very difficult to get started doing this.
Hmm.
And so she had been doing it and got me started. And that kind of led to me getting the real estate license around the same time. But I was
Hmm.
primarily focusing on mortgage, and I I was doing just regular refinance and straightforward purchases. But this was probably I started the summer right out of high school. I did do community college for one school year, but when I closed my first loan and I made like $10,000, I'm like, this is stupid. I'm not going back to school.
Yeah. Why am I going back to school and paying tuition and not making money?
Right, right. And I did that, and this is let me see, it was probably 2005 or 2006 or so
Okay.
Hmm.
when I was doing the mortgage. And the problem with mortgage with me is I'm not really detail oriented. And even when loans were easier to do, it's a very systematic process. So
Mhm.
the just doing that is
Painful.
difficult for me, and it was an easy transition to go from mortgage origination to real estate sales as a real estate broker, or
Mhm.
at the time an agent. So that's what I did. I went to start buying or working with buyers and sellers on
Mhm.
real estate transactions.
Yeah.
Did you realize from an early age your influence and how much you carried?
Not really. I mean, I always just kind of did what I want to do, right? And it
Mhm.
was a lot of times it was, I guess the best way to put it is coloring outside the lines, right? There was always I wanted to do
I like
things the
that.
way I wanted to do it, and whether
Entrepreneur.
anyone around me would support it or not, I wanted to do it anyway.
Yeah.
So, I don't feel like I ever stopped somebody else from doing anything. I just didn't want anyone to stop me from doing what I wanted to do. So, I
Mhm.
guess I've always had an entrepreneurial kind of spirit, really, and that started even when I was, a kid in junior high school. At that time, it was people had just started getting cell phones, really, and we didn't have the cell phone kiosks everywhere at the time. And I think I was 14. For some reason, I had a credit card at 14. I don't know how I did it.
Get out of
It's
here.
dangerous.
Yeah, I don't remember how
Oh
I
my
did
gosh.
it.
How old were you when you got your first credit card?
18. I remember they solicited me
Oh
at
my
the
gosh.
student union at UCF, and I was like, credit card? That means like free money? And
Yeah,
Can I get
I maxed that credit card out pretty fast.
I maxed mine out too. But what I did was I bought. I don't know if you guys remember the Nokia phone, the
two?
5100
Yes.
It's like a
I just bought
5100
it.
series. You can swap the
Perfect.
faceplate, and you can change the antennas and all this stuff.
A
Yeah,
I
relic.
just maxed that card out buying all that stuff online
right.
because I had found some cheap distributor for it, and it
A
was just
deal.
much cheaper than just going and buying it in the store. And this is kind of, you know, early 2000s when the internet wasn't like what it is now, right?
Right.
So I bought all that and I sold it at school, and I'd
Oh,
sell it for, I don't know, 5, 10 times more than I paid for it. And
yeah.
Wow.
I
Hustle
recruited
game.
my friend in school to go sell them to his friends. And we
So
had
you were
this,
essentially like flipping phones.
yeah, we had
That's
this
not
joke that
started.
I was his first employer, but and he's one of my,
Wow.
he's my business partner now
Yeah.
too. So he's actually
Wow.
here with,
Is there right now?
yeah.
Patrick.
So that's, and there was phone face plates, and then I was, again, I don't know how I ended up with these things, but I was one of the first ones where I had a CD burner, and I was copying CDs and selling the CDs. So it was always,
Gosh.
it's always selling something, right? So it's kind of a
knowing you,
natural
Jesse,
progression to real estate.
yeah, like I can totally, in knowing you, I can totally see that. Like, oh, like I don't know, I don't have it, but like Jesse has it.
Yeah, you're
like,
the guy that
he'll hook us
has
up.
what everyone needs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, to a degree.
So didn't realize this right off the bat. Kind of, take us through, because right now things are sounding good. Great family life. You're figuring out how to make money in high school. You've done,
making tens of thousands of dollars when you're 19, 20. That's a pretty big number for a 19-year-old kid.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I guess this kind of leads up to everything too. But as going through, it was junior high school and then high school, I was just buying and selling everything, right? It was cell phones, and then eventually it was computers and laptops. And I just ended up being, which I didn't know there was a word for it at the time, but now what I know is I was basically a fence, right? Someone would go and steal a bunch of car stereos over a weekend and they'd bring them all to me and I'd buy all of them. But I'd tell them, I'm going to buy all this and I'm going to pay you now, but I'm going to give you $10 for each CD player, for example, right? And then I'd buy, 15 or 20 of them, and then I'd sell each one for like $40 around school. So, and that was with car stereo, that ended up with computers. And I never asked where anything came from, but that just ended up, you start doing little by little, and then eventually this is just what comes to you, right?
Right.
And, it kind of occurred to me what was happening when I sold a guy a CD player, and it ended up being his. So, and I didn't.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he let me know that, but I'm like, whatever, man. I just bought it. So,
wow. Keep going.
But
okay.
And and that was just with a lot of things, and and then you get out of high school. I again start doing the mortgage and moving to real estate, and by this time, real estate's really hot and it's easy to buy houses. 2006, 2007 or so is around the time when I was really starting to sell real estate. And I wasn't doing a whole bunch of, several, hundreds of transactions, but I was doing enough for someone 19, 20 to make a great living, right? Where I live, even at that time, selling one house meant you made $10,000 or $15,000, right? Well, that's a gross commission. So it didn't take much to make, $100,000, $150,000 in a year, which as a early 20s, that just makes you feel like, you're the richest person in the world, right? So,
right. I'm guessing you weren't really like saving, putting that away towards retirement at that time.
No, not at all. Like, I also have this joke now. I don't feel like I'm that great with money to begin with, right? I'll go buy something stupid, but right now, the way I'm looking at it is if I have a little bit of cash and I'll go buy a house somewhere, then I can't spend it. So that's kind of the thought process now. But at the time, it was whatever, it was easy to make it and I can go make it again, right? And
make more.
I'll go buy whatever I want. So I knew I wanted to invest in real estate, but I just didn't really know how to do that properly, right? And I ended up at that time buying 2 houses, but I had bought them retail. I bought them off the MLS. They weren't going to be cash flow property. And I just kind of fell into that trap that everybody did at the time where, we're going to have appreciation. It doesn't matter if I'm negative a couple $100 or whatever, right? So I had these 2 houses. I had like $100,000 car, and I put nothing down on that. So that was like a house payment too. So, but it's just things like that. And then 2006, 2007 was okay. And I seem to remember around 2008 is when stuff started slowing down. And, and again, the timeline's kind of fuzzy because it was just, at this point, it's kind of a blur, but I think we all know the crash. This led up to the crash, the mortgage crisis. I do remember at this time, for me, stuff started kind of drying up. It was harder for me to find buyers. It was harder for me to find refinances. And I was still doing mortgage too. I was doing both. It was just, I liked the real estate better. But at this time, there was a couple cases I remember where lenders just basically shut down right at the closing table, and, it screwed up deals. And, looking back, it was easy to see that was kind of the beginning of, dominoes falling. But, when you're sitting there in the
You're in
middle of
it,
it, you're just like, whatever,
right?
we'll find another lender or we'll do this deal another way, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's been the pattern up until then, right? Like, okay, just on to the next one, on to the next one. So you're not
Right,
really
right.
stopping to pause and look at that something
The
else bigger is
landscape.
going on. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, for me at the time, real estate was just really transactional based. It was, sell this house and move on to the next one, sell the next house, make as many cold calls as possible and do as
Mhm.
many deals as possible. And there was no thought of buying something that has some cash flow, buying something that replaces some of my time to make these payments, whatever it is.
Mhm.
The things we think about now as adults. It wasn't really. I didn't think about it at all at that time. So naturally, when stuff really started slowing down, I started missing mortgage payments and car payments, and
Mhm.
eventually, all kind of came crashing down. But um, I remember it must have been 2008, or was it 2007? My car got repossessed on my birthday at
Oh,
like 3 in the morning.
wow.
I remember this actually. Like,
Mhm.
the guy came pounding on my door, and I thought it was the police. I thought I was going to go to jail because he was like banging on the door real hard. But I opened it, and there was this guy who's like, he had to have been like 6'8". Like, the guy was massive, right? And he took up the whole doorway.
Oh,
And
wow.
I don't normally look up.
You're a big guy.
Yeah, I'm pretty tall already, so I look up
Yeah,
at him,
you are.
like, I'm here for the Lexus. I'm like, oh well, here's the key.
Oh, man. What a
So
moment. So,
What a
like, that kind
birthday.
of,
How old were you? What was it? What birthday was that?
I think I was like 23, 20.
Wow.
I don't think I was quite 24. It was early. It must have been. It was 2008 or probably around there.
okay.
So I was probably like, oh, I probably just turned 24, right? So this was happening at the same time where I think I also just started missing the mortgage payment on that house, right?
Yeah.
So, and at the time I'm still thinking, all right, it's fine. I just need to go close one deal. I'll go catch up all
Sure.
these
Yeah.
things, right? But it
That's
just,
not
but
what happened.
yeah, by the time you do that, then you're even more behind, right? So, uh, back then there were a lot of short sales, and I was able to delay that foreclosure for quite a while, right?
Mhm.
And it was easy to do that at that time because
Mhm.
I mean the
Everything
bank was
was.
just inundated with these things,
Mhm.
and they were
Yeah.
doing them differently. But no, I eventually did foreclose on that house.
Mhm.
Uh, I short sold the other one that was supposed to be rented and it ended up being empty. But
Mhm.
uh, this is again kind of in that period of when the real estate crash was happening.
Yeah.
So I wasn't selling anything, I wasn't doing any loans, and I just kind of stepped back and I thought about now I have a 2-year-old, right?
I was gonna say,
And
you're not just yourself. You're not single. Like, you have
no,
a family and people that you're responsible for at this point in
yeah, at
time.
this point I had a 2-year-old. I had a family, and I have to think about what are we going to do to make sure we're not homeless, number one, right? And what am I going to do to make sure everyone's fed? So I I didn't. I don't want to say I squatted anywhere, but I basically squatted in my own house, not paying, and just kept delaying the
Mhm.
foreclosure. And when I knew that wasn't going to work, then I went to this other foreclosing place, and I paid the owner a few $100s a month to stay there, and I helped her
Mm.
delay that foreclosure, right? Because
Mhm.
they had
Wow.
already let it go; they didn't care. But a couple $100s a month, they were happy with it. So I think we moved like 6 times in a year,
Mm.
actually, when I think about it. And each time it's like, I got garbage bags covering the windows so no one can come look in. And, the banks were, the management companies were there, or the asset managers were looking at
Yeah.
houses and all that stuff. So I'd block windows and do things. And, you know, uh, back then you could just make up a name for the utility company that didn't exist and they turn power on for you. So you do that every month and a half to keep
Oh,
the
wow.
power on.
Mhm.
All these little things that's what we were doing just to get by. And you
Right.
know I kind of fell back into well, I thought about what's the easiest way for me to get some money now to feed everybody,
Mhm.
and it was kind of doing what I was doing in high school, right? And
Mhm.
I was never
Mm.
in gangs, but I knew a lot of these people, right? So, I was buying and selling their stuff for them, and that could have been anything, right? It was uh, again, computers or car stereo, and sometimes drugs too. And um, I got kind of involved in that world a little bit, where but that got difficult too. I didn't want to risk dealing with drugs too much, because the people you're dealing with they're kind of dangerous sometimes. So, and thinking of that, for some reason, the next logical thing in my mind at the time was, well, it's too dangerous to be dealing drugs, so I'm just going to beat up these drug dealers and rob them. Which I guess when
Even worse.
you're young, you think that you're invincible, right? And that was kind of what I was thinking. It's like, what are they going to do to me? I'm bigger than them, and they're not going to call the police. So for some reason, that seemed like the best option to me, and I did that a few times, and luckily I didn't get killed doing it, but it
a lot of lessons. Yeah.
It eventually, what made it hit home for me was, now my wife now, at the time, she just went along with whatever I'm doing. She didn't ask me questions. She didn't really know what I'm doing. All she knew is, we have food on the table and the lights are on. And
don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah, there was the thing that made me just kind of 180 on this thing is, she was in the car with me one time, and I pushed her head down so you couldn't see it from outside. And she's thinking, why are you doing this? Are you embarrassed of me or something, right? But I'm thinking, I don't want these people to know I have a family.
Wow.
And I don't want them following me home, and I don't want them kidnapping my son. So I'm like, and then I sat there, I'm like, why the hell am I doing this if this is something that's a possibility, right? And that's kind of when I backed away from all of that at that point. And
huge wake-up call.
Yeah, that was a wake-up call. And I know a lot of people who do these kinds of things are like, well, I'm doing what I got to do because I have to do it. That's not true. And I'll sit here and I'll tell everybody, I didn't have to do any of these things. I did what I thought was going to be the easiest thing to do, right? And that just seemed like the easiest thing at the time, right? And I could have done any number of things to avoid that, but that's just.
Well, I think your mindset right now, Jesse, like it's just so clear in that. And at the time, I know we all tack it up to, we're young and we make decisions off the cuff, but that realization came to you after, wasn't there somebody that intervened in your life and just kind of stepped in and then made you realize, was there somebody that did that, or is it?
Yeah. So I still have my real estate license at this time, and I'm just not doing shit with it really. But, I have the license, and I kind of got out of that whole world we were in, and I started making an effort more in real estate. And there was someone who I met who he was flipping houses, and we had already met before when I was really actually trying to sell things. But there was an opportunity where I called him. I think it was an expired listing call I called, and he happened to be part of that. And then he's like, oh, hey, do you want to list this house for me, right, for a flat fee? And just right there, I ended up just starting to list all his houses on flat fee listings. And he was flipping houses. He was flipping a whole bunch, actually pretty high volume at the time. And, that kind of at least started to give me regular income again. And I was able to watch him, and he showed me how this whole process really worked, right? How he's buying and how he's analyzing deals and doing the remodel and reselling and all that. And I did his listings for years, actually. And throughout that process, he partnered on me with several flips and let me run these flips so I can learn how that process is supposed to go and how to do it. So that person there, pretty much saved me in real estate, really. And and you can really argue that he might even save me from jail or being killed too. So I don't even know if he realized that, but that's how I came back. And this is probably 2011, 2012 or so. So I think there was a solid 3 years where I was just kind of all over the place. But when I started doing his listings, that's kind of when my life got back on track, or the right track at least.
Wow. Well, and I think it's important to note there that, the people that we run across in our business, in our industry, the things that they do and say matter, and it's very impactful. And, we are models to other people. And, what you said earlier, just, you'll argue with people all day that you don't ever have to do something. There's always another way. It's not always the easiest way or the path of least resistance, but there's certainly a way. And you found that, in attributing to your mentor who helped you realize that.
Yeah.
Right. It's funny. I was listing some of these houses, and there was this kind of not completely off subject, but a little bit of tangent. I was listing several of these houses, and a couple of them kept falling out because, bad loan, whatever it was. And there was just a string of a couple of them not working. And he called me and he's like, one thing he said to me is, you have to act like you've got a gun to your head and make sure these deals close. What would you do in that case? I don't remember the exact words, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, this is something that's happened to me before. So if that's the case, I'm going to treat it like
I got it.
Yeah. So there was, I was really passive as a listing agent initially. And I can look back now and realize I was kind of getting pushed around by buyer agents. But for some reason, when he said to me, you have to treat this like you have a gun to your head, I'm like, why am I letting these buyer's agents push me around, right? And that was kind of a switch that flipped for me. From then on, I was the one pushing everybody around. And it made listing a lot better, and was able to negotiate higher prices for years. And I feel like that still resonates with me now. So leading up to things I fight with on our MLS here, it even affects that too. So.
Yeah. So current state of affairs, you're doing very well right now, very successful. You're talking to me about a duplex project that you were doing recently, and
so now you're doing more acquiring than just listing, right?
Yeah. So I was doing the fix and flips, and they're great, and you find good deals, and you can remodel and sell, and you make money. But and I did several of those, and it ends up kind of just becoming another job, right? It's a high paying job, but it's still a job because. Again, I don't necessarily think I'm great with money. It's just if it's sitting there and then I want to use it on something. So about, let me see, how long has it been now? Right before COVID started. So about 3 years ago,
right.
I had, I think, one rental, if I remember right, because we got a really good deal on it and we ended up keeping it. But I had made this decision that a 30-year mortgage is going to be paid off around my retirement age. So we have to start keeping houses. And my first initial goal was, let's just keep one every year out of whatever we find, right? Keep one every year. And we ended up just keeping everything. So it was, several houses that were panic sellers and panic landlords because the COVID moratoriums and restrictions were going on. It was just hard to deal with. So we got great deals on a lot of different houses in the last couple of years from people who just wanted out. And with that, we inherited a lot of terrible tenants and squatters, and where we live here in the Seattle area, it's I think we had some of the worst eviction restriction in the country. But because of that, we were able to buy a bunch of these properties at a really good price. And it's been a little bit of a transition going from flipping everything to keeping everything, because at some point after about a year or so, and we look at the bank, I'm like, why do I not have any money? I'm like, oh, it's because we didn't sell anything. So we've had to kind of figure out how to balance that a little bit. But right now we've got a couple dozen rental units, and we're working on just buying as many more as we can.
Wow.
That's I mean, if there's a triumphant comeback, like, that's it right there.
I'm interested. So it sounds like you and your wife have been together for quite a long time now.
Oh yeah.
How did this affect your relationship? Like, when she did find out what was going on, and like, what has been the support that you've gotten from her? Because I think that's really important to talk about. I feel like everyone we've talked with so far with these triumphant comebacks had some kind of support system in their life, whether it was a mentor, it was their wife, it was a friend, which was super important to them during that time.
She's just 100% supportive of basically everything that I do from the time we've met, which I guess that for better or for worse, right?
Rings true.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of people would have done that the way she did. because I mean, we actually met in elementary school,
Oh,
and then
wow.
she moved away for a while, and
Yeah.
we happened to run into each other again, as
Mhm.
adults. And she, I don't know, she just loves me, I guess. That's really what it comes down to.
I mean, she
And
must.
she does, and she does. I've met her, and that's why I
Yeah,
was thinking,
but
for whatever reason, Jesse, I was thinking you guys were high school sweethearts because
Elementary
even
sweethearts.
yeah, but even in
Crazy.
just seeing them interact with each other, there's a lot of life lived, and I think you bring up a good
A lot of
point.
wisdom.
Yes,
A lot of wisdom comes from those kinds of experiences that you went through.
yeah.
I mean, you had a lot of battle scars.
yeah, no, she, I mean, when we met again, she was working, and I hadn't gone into bankruptcy and foreclosed and all that yet,
Mhm.
Yeah.
but she's never been uh, she's never been you know impressed or
Mhm.
cared of whether I had money or not. It was just
Yeah.
she you know sh she loves me, and that was it. And even though we were moving around a lot in the first year of our relationship and or first couple years, and
Yeah.
we were having issues just
Mhm.
buying food sometime. A lot of times I just filled up my shopping cart and just walked out of the store, and no one ever stopped me. So that's kind
Wow.
of, diapers and food sometimes.
Yeah.
But uh doing that, she didn't really question what we were doing. And
Mhm.
Mm.
um
Your heart was your heart was family placed,
yeah,
and
yeah, no, it's I
whatever it
did what
takes. Yeah.
yeah, I guess
Mm.
it's an unconventional thinking, I guess, right? Again, coloring
Yeah.
outside of the lines. It was, well,
Mhm.
Well,
I've
it's
got a
interesting
kid, and
too, the way that you grew up, you were grateful for the things that you had because of where your parents came from, and I'm certain that you guys are grateful for the things you have today because of where you guys came from. Like, you had that perspective when you were younger, and you have that perspective
Adulthood.
as an adult too, as
yeah,
a couple.
no, I know that, even though there's things my parents struggled with, I know that it would have been the same thing with them. I know my dad would do whatever he needed to do and whatever
Right.
to make sure we're fed and make sure we had a home. And I guess that translated really well and
Yeah.
ingrained while I was growing up. But
Yeah.
um, definitely, I guess, the way I look at things might be a little skewed because, I was involved with a lot of this, maybe, what's the word I want to use? You know, illicit things, right? Activity. And I
Right.
grew up around that too. A lot of my family were involved with that, and I see them doing that. So
Mhm.
maybe that's part of the reason why when I was a kid, I look at that, I'm like, oh, well, if they can do that, then I'm going to do that too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
at this point, we're not doing that anymore. And
Yeah.
it's a
Right.
lot better. I mean, I make a lot more doing things this way than I
Mhm.
probably would have ever dreamed of making back then. Right.
The
So,
Right.
streets.
and now
Mhm.
I don't have to worry about who's driving by my house in the middle of the night, or
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
who might knock on my door, or anything else like that.
Right, with your sons and your family.
Right.
So, Jesse, what do you have your eyes set on for 2023? Just kind of rounded the corner. Kind of
Yeah. What are you guys working on?
what's the focus?
We are focusing on trying to buy more multifamily and using seller financing and any kind of creative financing
Mhm.
we can. Uh, we just want to increase the number of units, the number of rental units.
Mhm.
Right now, we're looking at RV parks and mobile home parks because I like that demographic. and
Mhm.
and I
Right.
and I don't read a lot of stuff. I don't look at news stories. It's just something that I feel like is true, that the entry level demographic is going to be there regardless of what's happening in the market or stock market or who's going to war with who. The people are going to be there, right? I'm looking at myself now, like I've got one mobile home park with somebody. We got a lot of rentals that are kind of at the median price point or lower,
Mhm.
and I've not had any problem ever filling those vacancies.
Yeah.
In fact, I feel like I can't keep something vacant for 10 minutes without somebody asking for it. So
Yeah.
I wanted to be
It's
looked
pretty
at like kind of like a Walmart of
Mhm.
rental units, right? Where this is high volume and you don't make as much on in rent, but you have a steady source of tenants who, a
Yes.
lot of them are absolutely qualified for it. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
stuff is just expensive, especially where we are here in the Seattle area. Things are really expensive. And we're making sure we buy properly to a point where we can undercut anyone else providing something similar because we bought it at a price point where it allows us to do that. So it's been really easy to fill vacancies. It's been easy to rent things. I have tenants who are very appreciative of the places we're providing because we're still remodeling these houses or cleaning up these spaces and I put the same thing in a $300,000 house as I would put in a $700,000 house. It's the same cabinets, it's the same appliances, it's the same flooring. It's a beautiful home, and then someone gets to go in there and rent it for, an entry level price point, right? So, they're a lot. The tenants have been happy with everything so far. I mean, that's what people tell me. I don't know. Maybe some people aren't, but I think everyone's pretty happy with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it brings up a good point because there's no middle ground anymore. It seems everything is so expensive to rent. It feels like a gouging. I was speaking to somebody the other day, one of the inspectors, and he owns some property, and he was talking to me about how his rent had increased from $500 up to $1,500, and he was excited about it, but that inner person in me saying like, well, who is that helping? Is that serving the people the tenants that you're looking to fill? Is it serving the community? And there's a lot of unraveling around that. So I think you bring up a really good point. They're there, they're beautiful homes, they're beautiful locations, and people are able to live there, and it's giving back.
Yeah, no, I agree in that. We are trying to provide affordable housing, and it's a buzzword, especially here in the Seattle area. Affordable housing, but I feel like it's mostly lip service for the most part. Is something they're using to just to create revenue for our government locally. But I'm actively trying to do things to provide affordable housing spaces and options. And right now that's RV pads and tiny home pads, right? Where I can put the infrastructure in and someone can come and hook up their tiny home for, 6 months or something. And they have a space where it's clean and it's not, there aren't needles everywhere. There isn't trash everywhere because I'm not letting that happen. But it's either it's going to be there or it's going to be in the street somewhere. And I think it's better parked somewhere in a little community than it is in an overpass.
Absolutely. Well, it goes to what we were kind of talking about earlier. Carrie, Holly, and I were diving into, where's the heart center, and is it around serving people? What are we doing for others? And
basically, are you operating your business from the heart or the head? And a lot of us are operating it from the head. We just got to make money. We got to grow. We got to operate. What are the new systems that we're going to put in place? And a lot of times, the biggest growth in our business come from those like heart-centered spaces where we're not solely looking at it for the profit, but how are we serving our community? How are we serving our clientele? How are we serving our customers? And when you're heart-centered around something, the money comes somehow, somewhere, and probably more abundance than if you're running your business from the head.
And it gives them the opportunity that they wouldn't have otherwise had.
And we were talking about like, what have we done in our business that has been heart-centered versus head-centered? And it's interesting because when we think about all the heart-centered things that we've done in our business over the last decade, those have been the ones that we've gotten really good at, that we've become masters at, that we've made a lot of money at, that we've enjoyed doing. And this is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a balance on it a little bit. Like when we first started buying these rentals, and I was inheriting these squatters, and I was really bending over backwards and doing everything I could to try and get all these people on their feet. And my thought was, oh, they just need someone to help them, and I can be the person that helps them. That'll get them back on track. But it's you when you deal with enough people like this, you realize, for the most part, most of them are in a position like this because of their own action. And, I dealt with, I think I evicted 19 people total in a year. And, it kind of, my tune and my thought on it changed a little bit after that first year, really, where
Yeah.
I was doing things like buying them food and
Oh, wow.
clothes and computers. I gave one of them a car, and they just kind of,
Wow.
shit all over it sometimes, where I
Yeah.
got kind of bitter after that first year
Mhm,
doing
mhm,
this, and I had to step back and really think about what I'm doing. But
mhm.
Yeah.
it's, it just makes you combative, and I'm already naturally a combative person. So to be more, to
No,
have,
I don't see that.
I'm not seeing that side.
yeah,
Really, I'm not seeing that side.
right, to be more combative than even some of my friends, that they even told me privately, like, you're kind of really fighting about these people for no reason sometimes. I'm like, all right, well, I step back a little bit. So I think we're working on a good balance right now with
Yeah.
that, where at the same time I am providing these affordable spaces. But
Yep.
sorry about that.
Yeah.
And then in the other case, they I'm not letting them take advantage of us or destroy our property either. So
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, finding a happy medium in between that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for just coming on here and sharing your story and your business. If anyone wants to connect with you, where can they connect with you?
I'm on Facebook usually, just with my first and last name in the Seattle area. My last name Lee is only one E, so that's easier to find. I have an Instagram, but I don't ever use it. So
Okay.
So Jesse Lee with one E.
yeah.
All
Jesse
right.
Lee with one E.
Sounds good.
Mhm.
Well, Jesse, thank you again. I hope
Yeah.
to see you and your family soon. I
Yeah.
don't know if we'll be making a trip out west. I know we're kind of literally
Mhm.
at the opposite ends of the country, but
Right.
still
Right.
always keeping in touch. That's one of the cool things about with our work. So
Community.
yeah,
Yeah.
very much.
Well, yeah.
All right.
Well, thanks for having me, and hopefully there's some value here. And
So much.
if there's anything else in the future, just don't hesitate.
For sure. What's one takeaway, if you speaking to your younger self,
You can go back.
Yeah, you can go back.
Talk to your
One
younger
nugget.
self.
One nugget.
When I started, it was very easy to buy houses and finance them.
Uh-huh.
This is, and it's the same thing for anyone doing real estate at the time, is I should have bought and held whatever I can, right?
Mhm.
But taking one step further than that, I so real quick, I had a string of flips that didn't go very well a few
Mhm.
years ago for various reasons. Some were my own, but some of them is outside my control. And I lost money on some. I barely made on anything in several years on others. And at that point, that was another light switch turning point moment where I decided I'm not going to buy anything unless it's going to make the right amount of money on it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's, in a nutshell, it's just, I would tell myself, buy what I can, but buy properly, right?
Yeah.
Something that has to, number one, it has to cash flow. And right now I'm only buying something anticipating that I'm going to have 8 or 9% interest on my mortgage. So it has to cash flow at that point when I'm done
Yeah.
with the DSCR or whatever kind of loan I do. And it has to be able to make money the second I buy it. So I'm only buying something where I can turn around and list it and make money on it immediately. And if
Okay.
it doesn't fit those two criteria, then I'm not buying it. So I would have told myself the same thing: buy something properly, make money on the buy, not making money on appreciation or even the value add, right? And buy something that cash flows. And
There
if
it
you
is.
can just do those two things, then you'll do fine in real estate, I believe.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
Totally
All right,
agree.
I'm taking those. Yep.
Yeah.
Agree. And we always get trapped in the, well, it will cash flow. Like, what if? But
Yeah.
you're
Well, especially
Um,
in today's market,
can't-
things are appreciating.
yeah.
Yeah, we can't make the deal work, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was a problem I had when I was doing mortgage. Just I tried to make every single mortgage work, even though this person was not qualified. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
No matter how much I move things around and spin it around, it's just not going to work, right?
Yeah.
So just
I think we all do that. I think we all try to, at one point, try to make the deal work. Like I remember at one point I said to myself, if I'm spending this much time trying to make it work, there's probably a reason why it's not working.
Right.
And so I would have like a time cap, like, okay, if I've analyzed it this much and I still can't see where it's going to work, it's not going to work. I can't crunch the numbers anymore, because I would start like, oh, I I can raise the ARV a little bit because things are appreciating. I can lower the repairs because I can like do some things by myself, or like you start to try to like figure out how to make it work, and that's when you usually run into problems.
Yeah, every time.
Yep.
Wow.
All right.
Good takeaways.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Jesse. And you guys make sure to reach out to Jesse, connect with him. Just an amazing person to get to know. Lots of life wisdom in those years that you've built up your business. So I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing all that with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm happy to answer questions if people have them, and just reach out and like I said, don't hesitate.
Yeah.
Will do. Thanks, Jesse.
All right, guys, that's it for this episode. We'll see you on the next. And remember,